So there's this thing that happens when you tell people you ride a Harley. They make an assumption about who you are, what you believe, and how you ride. And look, I get it, because when I was on a Kawasaki ZXR 750 in my 20s, I probably would have made the same assumption. But here's the thing, I didn't choose a Harley because I'm some brand loyalist. I chose it after 30 years away from motorcycles, and what I found, what the data actually shows, is that my story isn't unusual. It's actually the rule. And that's what this video is all about. You see, I wave at every rider I pass, and when I wave at someone on a sports bike, sometimes you can see them just clock it. Like they just weren't expecting a Harley rider to acknowledge them, and they generally wave back. But the online story is very different. You've seen the videos, sports bike riders filming themselves, they're passing a group of Harleys, they frame it as territorial, aggressive, Harley riders think they own the road. And look, I'm not going to pretend those dynamics don't exist somewhere, but what bothers me is this. Those videos are being watched by people who are thinking about riding, and some of them are crossing Harley off the list for a reason that isn't actually real. Now, I came across a new rider recently who'd bought his first Harley. Now, he loves the bike, he hasn't even done his riding course yet, and he's already asking people how to avoid being mistaken for a Harley bro. So he actually justified his own purchase. In his defense, he wrote, "I don't fit on a lot of other bikes." Did you hear that? In his defense, for buying the bike that he actually wanted. Now, I know what it takes to come back to riding after a long time away. I know how many reasons you can find not to do it. And the last thing someone needs is a false one added to that list. So that image exists for a reason. There is a Harley aesthetic, like leather, chrome, the sound, and a culture. Now, there is also a 1% outlaw clubs out there with their own rules and their own world, and I'm not part of that, and I'm not here to speak for them. Now, the passing thing, that is real, but it's very specific. So in outlaw MC culture, passing a club pack without signaling is considered disrespectful. There is a protocol, you signal your intent, you get the nod, you pass through with respect. It exists between clubs as a sign of mutual respect. It's not about blocking anyone. It's a culture with its own rules that goes back for decades. But here's what those videos don't tell you. That protocol exists in a very specific world. The bloke on his Harley doing a Sunday ride with either his hog buddies or his friends, they aren't enforcing anything. They're just riding with mates. Same as any other group of riders heading out together. They're not a club. They're not enforcing rules. They're just people who enjoy riding and each other's company. And the cruising gets misread too. Cruising on a Harley doesn't mean going slow. I mean, I cruise. I generally sit around the speed limit most of the time. It means riding at a pace that you're comfortable with and not trying to wring every last kilometer out of that engine. Now, that is a choice. It's not actually a limitation. That is the way most Harley riders like to ride. They're just cruising, not trying to go as fast as they can. So the honest version is this. Yes, there are Harley riders who do fit the stereotype. There are also riders of every brand who fit their stereotype. Every group has its version. What I'm pushing back on is the idea that the stereotype is the whole story, because the numbers tell something completely different. So I started looking at this a bit more carefully, because frustration is one thing, but if I'm going to make this argument, I want to back it up with something more than just my own experience. Who actually rides Harleys? Not the stereotype, not the YouTube comments, the actual numbers. What does the data show about the people who are buying these bikes? Where do they come from and what did they ride before? So I went looking. I went into Harley-Davidson's own financial reports, their own internal data. And what I found is not what those videos would have you believe. It's not even close. So Harley-Davidson's own financial report from Q2 2024 puts the average buyer at age 45. Not 65, 45. And that's just the finance purchases. 30% of buyers are paying cash, and they skew even older still. Now, these are not people who just discovered motorcycles. Think about what 45 actually means. That's someone who's probably been riding for 25 years, someone who's had enough time to own a few cars, maybe a few bikes, and to figure out what they actually like. Now, the average Harley buyer isn't a kid who saw Sons of Anarchy and went straight to the dealership. There's someone who's been around long enough to know what they want. And even back in 2007, nearly 20 years ago, Harley's own internal data showed that 33% of buyers had previously owned a competitor's motorcycle. Only 15% were buying their first bike ever. So even then, most Harley riders had been somewhere else first. They didn't fall into it, they arrived at it. That pattern isn't new. It's been consistent for decades. But here's the one that got me. In 1987, half of all Harley riders were under 35. Half. By 2008, the average age was 48. That brand didn't attract old people from the start. It attracted riders who were young, kept riding, got older, and they stayed. That's not a demographic quirk. It's a pattern. Riders find Harleys when they've had enough miles behind them to stop caring about what other bike riders say about them and start caring about how it feels to ride. Now, that's not a brand for people who don't know better. That's a brand for people who've been around long enough to decide what they actually want. So here's what I think about this. You see, I had a Kawasaki ZXR 750. Now, that's a super sport bike. And I also had a genuine appreciation for the Ducatis of that time. I just never pulled the trigger to buy one. And I was off bikes for around 30 years. And when I came back, I didn't buy the most practical option or the fastest option. I bought the bike that felt right for me. My riding mate Grant, he's been on more bikes than he can probably count. And he came back to riding not all that long ago. And he's on a Harley now too. Now, neither of us got here by accident. We got here because after everything else, this is the one brand that we wanted. And that wave story I started with, that surprise when a sports bike rider realized the Harley bloke is nodding at them, that's not an exception. That's just what us riders do. The stereotype says otherwise, but the road doesn't. So if you're watching this as a sports bike rider or a Japanese cruiser rider thinking Harley isn't for you, well, maybe you're right. Maybe it never will be. But if you keep riding long enough and you reach the point where the spec sheet stops being the whole conversation, don't be surprised where you end up. Most of us said the same thing once. Now look, I know this one's going to split the room, and honestly, that's fine. I'm not trying to convert anyone. If you're on a sports bike and you love it, keep loving it. If a Harley never makes sense to you, that's a legitimate outcome. But what I do want is for that decision to be based on the reality of who rides these bikes, not the version that gets clicks on YouTube. Because there's a real person out there right now who just bought his first Harley and he's already apologizing for it. And that's the part that really gets me. So here's what I want to know. If you're on a Harley, what did you ride before? I reckon the answers are going to prove the point better than any stat I can throw at you. And if you're on something else and you think I've completely lost the plot, say that too. Put it in the comments. I genuinely want to hear both sides. Now, if you're new here, I'm Rob. I'm in my 50s. I came back to riding after a 30-year break. This channel is about figuring it all out again. And if that sounds like your kind of thing, stick around, ride safe. I'll see you on the next one.